It says we are live.
Hi everybody! We're going to wait for a couple people to come on to live. We are in our education area today, and we have a really special segment planned for you today. Of course, plans always go awry, so we have some new things that we're going to throw into the mix for you. But if you'll follow me, I know that you guys are super excited to come back to the zoo. Unfortunately, the main building will not be open quite yet. We are only allowing the path to the restrooms. This will be closed during the day, unfortunately. But with that in mind, we wanted to give you another tour of the education area just to get you reacquainted with these lovely animals that we can't see quite yet. So come on and follow me this way. We'll come and look at some cool animals. We have anyone watching yet?
We have 6 people.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
I'm trying my bestest to keep this camera stable for you guys, and I'm very sorry if I'm failing.
As usual, Ivy the mink is not super visible, so that hasn't changed since you guys have been gone. She's probably napping up in one of these logs, or maybe even hiding down further somewhere else. But our awesome zookeepers today helped us out by a lot of the animals who are eating their food today. So we're going to see if we can see anybody out today. Oh, looks like Stevie the leopard gecko is right out here. I'm going to close this door so we can hear ourselves. So Stevie the leopard gecko is out, and looks like she's hunting for her crickets. There's a tiny little cricket right over in front of her that she's watching, trying to figure out if she can get to it. These guys are nocturnal, and you guys probably, if you were watching our very first live, she was part of that, and she was amazing. Now, we also have 2 new exhibits. One of them is going to be a quarantine exhibit for a new animal that's coming in, and then when this exhibit is done, this will be where that new guest goes. So if you have an idea of what animal you think it will be, put it in the comments and we'll see what you can say. Taco the king snake is pretty active today. It is feeding day, so he's getting ready and he's excited for some food. You see him very active there. Spitzer the hedgehog is still sleeping, so we'll just go ahead and leave him alone. Let's see. Ooh, Bandy the armadillo is out. She's right here, right underneath her. She's digging around for her bugs. I don't know, can you see her? Yeah, awesome. Oh, good morning, everybody. We're so glad that you're here. We're just taking a walk around our education building and then an animal. So Bandy's exploring, looking for bugs, using that amazing sense of smell. Little Slughorn is sleeping in this corner. She's our white tree frog. She is also mostly nocturnal, so she's spending her days sleeping away.
She's so silly.
She is. Grumpy, the hognose snake, is also in the back there. He is probably waiting for his food as well. And then, right here in the bottom corner, we have Harry the ball python, who is everybody's favorite. He's one of my favorites, too. He's just calmly waiting. He might actually eat his food today, too. All right, coming over here, we have our red-tailed boa Leroy. And he is also napping and waiting for his food. The snakes all get fed usually on Saturdays, so we are super excited to feed them later today. All right, my kids are loving this. Awesome, thanks, Dawn. Ooh, let's see if you guys can see any of the tree frogs, or the dart frogs. So it's a little bit misty, but we have 6 blue tree frogs in there.
Kind of see them, but it's hard to focus.
There's one maybe
little blue dots.
Little blue dots, don't worry. Oh, and Jane I keep calling everyone the wrong name. Jane, the Madagascar day gecko, is all the way up at the top there, hiding amongst her greenery there. And then we can't see Cheech because she's hiding as usual, our little cane toad. And Jenkins, our other red-tailed boa, is also waiting for her this morning. And you can probably hear Sydney. She's ready to see everybody too for her spotlight. Oh, we've got Roxy peeking out over here, our little 3-toed box turtle. You guys have probably seen her a lot too. She's quite a fun one that comes out to a lot of programs. Our chinchillas are also being shy still, but hopefully they'll be out more when people start coming in. You can barely tell that she's in there, but she is right inside this little hide. And then, of course, Sydney's close-up.
Zedbird!
Hi, Sydney!
Say hello, Zedbird.
Sydney says good morning. And with that, we'll introduce you to our special guest today. It's Kuzco! So we will hand it over to Miss Emily here, and she will tell us all about green iguanas.
Hello, Kuz. Alright, so before we start talking about Kuzco, there was a question from CJ about whether or not we had our sloths yet. We do not have our sloth yet. The exhibit is currently under construction. Sometime in 2020, we will be getting a sloth friend. TBD as to when that exactly will be. But if you come into the building, once the zoo opens to go to the restroom, you'll actually be able to see the current in-the-works sloth enclosure. But onto this guy, which is Kuzco. He is a green iguana. He came to us as a juvenile in the zoo in 2012. So we actually didn't know how old he is since he came to us as a juvenile. He's about 10. He's about 10 years old. So he's an adult green iguana. He is probably about my height. He's probably about 5 feet long. From the tip of his nose all the way down to the tip of his tail. Now, these guys are super common pets, but they are very difficult to care for. So Kuzco here, he used to be a pet, didn't he? No.
He came from another facility.
Oh, he came from another zoo. Okay, I'm learning about Kuzco as we speak. Hello. Hello. So he came to us from another zoo, but these guys are super common pets. They are native to subtropical South America, and they have actually been introduced into parts of North America. So in southern Florida, there are populations of green iguanas, probably as a result of people who did have them as pets and just released them into the wild, which if you do have an exotic pet, that's really not a good practice if you don't want it anymore. Please look up proper ways to take care of it and maybe give it to an animal care facility like a zoo, and then they can give it the proper care that it needs. As a result of these people releasing the iguanas into southern Florida, you have iguanas kind of a little bit of everywhere, similar to the pythons in the Everglades. Now, Kuzco is a reptile, which means he's going to be a cold-blooded critter, which means basically his body temperature is determined by the temperature of the environment around him. So I think it was a couple of years ago, there were articles all over the news of these green iguanas falling out of trees in Florida when it got super cold. And this is because the iguanas also got cold as well, and it was a little bit more difficult for them to move around how they would normally because they were the temperature of the outside environment. Now, Kuzco and green iguanas in general have a couple of really cool adaptations. You can see him right now looking at you head on, and if you see that little flap underneath his chin, that is called his dewlap, and he uses that for signaling. So according to the St. Louis Zoo, male green iguanas can actually inflate that dewlap and make themselves look bigger, which can be beneficial for mating and territorial displays. Right now, what he's doing is he's head bobbing at the iPad, which we are recording on. And head bobbing is a communication method that these green iguanas use. It can mean anything from hello to stay out of my way to, oh, hello, you look kind of nice today, if he's trying to attract a female. So these head bobs have a variety of different meanings depending on the social context in which they occur. There, he was probably just very curious and saying hello to all of you guys tuning in today. Now, if you can see him from the side, you see that he has this super, super long tail. Not many things eat green iguanas. They're pretty much at the top of their food chain. But if they do have to make a quick escape, they can actually use this tail as not only a whip to like thwap at their intruders or predators, but they can also use it kind of as a rudder for swimming. So one of the green iguana's defenses is that it can actually hold its breath underwater for up to 30 minutes if it feels threatened. And it can actually use their tail to, like a fish, and swim through the water very quickly to escape its predator or intruder or whatever is threatening it at that time. There are other species of iguana that can also swim. So there are 35 species of iguana, including the Galapagos iguana, the marine iguana down there. And they actually spend lots of their time in the water. They eat primarily kelp, or algae, and seaweed. And so you will see them using their tails like those swimming rudders. I think they're on like Planet Earth 2 or something like that, if you guys want to look that up and see an iguana swimming in the water. Now, Kuzco here, while he can swim, he's going to spend most of his time in the trees, meaning he's an arboreal animal. If you guys can get a close-up look at his claws and at his feet, you can actually see that they're very well adapted for gripping on and to climbing onto trees. So he's got super long claws, very big quote-unquote hands, and these allow him to stay completely arboreal. In the wild, they really only come down every once in a while, either to change trees if they get bored of the tree that they are currently in, or exhaust all the nutrients that that tree's got, and to mate as well. So despite his big size, it's a common misconception that these guys are carnivores. They look like they would be a carnivore. Just by looking at them, they kind of look like a dinosaur. These guys are actually herbivorous, so he loves to eat, leaves and various veggies of all sorts. And that's what he eats in the wild as well. He'll eat primarily leaves and grasses.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? Let's see it on here. And if you guys don't have questions, that's okay. This is Kuzco the green iguana, for those of you who are just chiming in with us. We took a bit of a tour of our education building, and our zookeepers are being very awesome and letting Kuzco, they're helping us out, having Kuzco go for a walk. Now this is a green iguana skull, which Kuzco thinks is a very interesting thing, apparently. So you see they've got big nasal passages there, so they've got a pretty decent sense of smell, and big eye sockets as well. I believe they have pretty good color vision, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so our keepers are telling us that they have really good color vision. Again, if you're a plant eater, you want to be able to identify your food from a good distance away in all sorts of different colors. So if you guessed iguana for this picture here of the skull that we have, you had it correct. They have pretty simple peg-like teeth. They are sharp, but if we can get a close-up of that, these little teeth, again, they're not meant for eating meat, but if they have a pretty nasty bite if you interact with them in the wild, so maybe don't, mess with iguanas in general. Oh, we do have a question. So Bernadette asks, how long do they live?
10 to 15 years.
They usually live about 10 to 15 years. And he is about 10 years old. So in the wild is when they would live 10 to 15 years. With good care in a zoo or in another type of setting, he would probably live into his late 20s. Yeah, into his 20s. So he can live quite a long time. He's about middle-aged at this point. Thanks for the questions, guys. All right, keepers, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you guys have any fun facts you want to share about Kuzco?
Let's see. Emily did a really good job talking about Kuzco.
Yay, Emily.
Hi, buddy.
Kuzco is technically trained to walk around the building and go on a walk, but today he's not feeling super active, so he just kind of parked himself. Usually he will walk around the whole building and follow us and check out everybody who's in here, just like you guys just did. He really likes to visit Scout the owl, because Scout usually moves around a whole bunch when she sees Kuzco, and Kuzco thinks that's fun. He also likes to visit Jack, the Savannah monitor. Right now Jack's not moving, so I don't think Kuzco realizes that he's out right now.
All right, my friends. Ooh, why are his scales partly down on his back? That's a good question. On the spikes, I think you were talking about, Brandis?
So the spikes are for displaying, and the older they get, the bigger the spikes get, and they'll get more colorful. His spikes, he had some shedding issues, so most of them are already popping back up. The ones they're kind of laying down are working on popping back up, just like those orange ones towards the back. They should all be like that, but he had a weird shed, so it didn't quite pop back up how it was supposed to.
And you can see some of them are looking a little bit lighter than others, like these ones right here. And those still have a shedding cap on them. So he's still working on his shedding on those spikes on his back. All right, my friends. I'll give it a couple more seconds for any other questions, and then we are going to move to our next animal encounter.
What is this? What is this?
So part of the reason why Kuzco here goes for walks. All right, so part of the reason why we go for walks with Kuzco is for enrichment. So enrichment is anything that makes your brain work, right? So if you have a puzzle feeder for your dog, or you give your cat a box to jump in and out of, that's something that makes their brain work, right? It's something out of the ordinary. And a walk around the building with lots of other animals to see, lots of things to interact with, is enriching for Kuzco. So he likes to walk around, check out his surroundings, and he just likes to have a good time in general.
He also likes to meet guests, because he's trained to be super calm and let you guys pet him. He actually really likes it, kind of like when you give your dog scratches. It's just the same for him. He just doesn't have fur, he has scales.
Awesome. All right. So I don't see any more questions. So we're going to ask Keeper Josh to lead us to our next thing. But while he's getting ready, would you grab our other skull? So one little deviation from our plan of the week, we posted 2 different pictures of skulls, and one was of the iguana, so nicely done for the few of you who guessed that. The other skull was of a porcupine. However, our porcupine this morning did not feel like getting up early and coming on live, so Keeper Josh nicely agreed to do a training session with one of our animals. So this is that porcupine skull. It looks very similar to a beaver. Beavers have a little bit wider of teeth and a little bit stronger and longer. They are a little bit bigger than the porcupines, but that is what this skull was. So nice guesses for some of you, very nicely done. And if you had a beaver, you were also very close. Again, Lander, the porcupine, didn't feel like joining us today, but you get another awesome treat instead. All right, let's see. Any other questions so far? Kuzco's going to hang out over here, but we are actually going to focus on this exhibit right here. And this exhibit is the Savannah Monitor exhibit. His name is Captain Jack. So we are super excited to see his training session today. It looks like, oh, I think I found him. I think he's hiding underneath over there. Do you guys see him? So he's just barely out of being or right in being a teenager, so he gets a little shy sometimes. But Keeper Josh is going to do a training session with him. So I am going to hand this over to Miss Emily, and we'll chat about training here at the zoo. All right, whenever you are ready. So Kuzco might join us over here just because I'm sitting over here. But training at the zoo is really an important part of every animal's life. It's enriching, which is really cool. Remember, it works their brains. It's kind of like trying to, if you have a baby brother or a baby sister, it's kind of like trying to communicate with them. They don't understand your language, but you're trying to communicate with them. And it's a similar thing with animals. You don't speak their language, so you have to find a way to communicate with them to get them to do what you ask. At our zoo, we only use what's called positive reinforcement training. And that means that, oh, can you guys see him in the back? So he is training to target. Ooh, and he got a nice little roach for food today. Awesome. So positive reinforcement training means that we ask an animal to do a behavior that they've been working on doing. If they do it correctly, they get a treat or part of their diet. If they don't do it correctly or they do something else that they're not being asked to do, we don't punish them, we don't whack them with a newspaper, we don't tell them no, we just ignore the offered behavior if it's not what we're looking for. Now, we also, so you might, I don't know if you heard it in the background, but he's also using a clicker, and the clicker is called a bridge. So when the animal does appropriate behavior, if you can't give the food immediately, that clicking noise means, hey, food is on the way. So it tells the animal that they still did this behavior correctly, but it also allows you to have a little bit of time to get the animal the reward that they're looking for. Now, if today Jack hadn't felt like training, we're not going to force our animals to do things they don't want to do. So we also wouldn't withhold his food. So if he's getting part of his meal for his training today, we would just simply not feed him right in this moment, because many animals are smart and will learn, hey, if I don't do anything, I still get my food. So what we do is we end the training session as positively as we can, hopefully at least reinforcing 1 or 2 of the behaviors that we're asking for, and then we'll walk away for maybe 10 or 15 minutes or later on in the day, and then they'll get that diet again. So again, we don't withhold their food if they don't do what we ask. It's simply a way to positively train an animal. Do you have anything to add there, Keeper Nilly? About training? So Keeper Nilly went to school specifically to be a zookeeper, so she knows a lot about training and about zoo animals. So do you have anything to add about training?
I always find that for training, it's really important that you start with a working relationship with an animal. I worked with a coyote at my school, and for him, instead of having just a relationship with him, it was important that we started with a working relationship so that he came to kind of respect me, and I learned how he worked as well. So we do a lot of that as well, making sure that we are able to work with him a little bit better.
Good boy. That's awesome. So basically, understanding that these animals, they do have to trust us to some extent to be comfortable enough to train, right? So you can't just take an animal from the wild and expect it to understand that this human's not going to hurt it. So you have to build up this trust with an animal to be able to work with them in the first place. Now, Kuzco is actually watching Jack's training encounter, which is cool for him too.
Jack is still, like we said, a little bit hesitant still, probably because I'm talking pretty loud, and he's like, why are all these people watching me? And Kuzco too, but he's learning to be more comfortable in his exhibit as well. So the target training in and of itself, that little blue ball on the end of the stick that Keeper Josh is using, is a very useful behavior to be training an animal. It can help them move throughout an exhibit, as well as help them hold attention on something if they, say, need to do a medical procedure of some kind, because then they can hold still. And there's a lot of other training that we do here at our zoo, but this is a really fun one to do. Now you might see his tongue flicking in and out. He's smelling. So he is also a reptile. Savanna monitors are found throughout Central and a little bit into Southern Africa. And they are they are a carnivorous species. They use that really long tongue to scent for food. So he's scenting that his food is up in those tongs. And he's trying to provide the proper response so that he can get his treat, or his food actually. So today he's getting a mix of superworms, which is the larvae stage of a type of beetle. He also, if you saw earlier, had a mouse. And he gets a lot of different other kinds of food to make sure he has a varied diet. In the wild, they'll eat eggs, rodents, insects, birds, and even other reptiles. So they are not super specializing on the food that they eat. So let's watch him for a minute and see what he does. And I'm gonna go grab another skull to show you kind of what Jack's teeth look like while you guys are watching his training session. I'm going to bring this skull onto frame here. This is the skull of a Gila monster, which is a type of lizard found in the southwest United States. Oh, there we go. Oh, where are you going?
I'm backing up so I can show it.
There we go. So this is a Gila monster skull. They have some pretty intense teeth. They're kind of curved and they're very sharp and pointy. The Savanna monitor's teeth are a little bit bigger, like thicker around, but they're a similar type. They have these really sharp edges and they're very meant for biting into things and bigger things like larger rodents and larger birds and even lizards. And that's how they actually catch and eat their food. Pretty cool, right? Oh. I don't know if you saw that. Okay, good. Well, if you heard a weird noise, Kuzco decided that he was going to use the bathroom right in front of Jack's exhibit. So we'll have to clean that up here a little bit later, but just like you, all animals poop. So it's normal. Ooh. Do we have any questions so far? No questions. Awesome. I see one that says, was that the kookaburra that went off? So we do have Sydney the kookaburra, the laughing kookaburra. She did go off earlier, and she's been chattering at us on and off to make noise. She does miss all the interaction with people, we think, so she's been making a lot of noise to get our attention, too. All right. So Jack had a really good training session, so Keeper Josh is ending it, like we said, on that positive note, and he gets the rest of his food to eat as he'd like. All right, are there any questions about training or about Savanna monitors or about iguanas?
Yes, hi, bud.
So Jack the monitor is focused on his food and Kuzco is focused on gesturing at everybody. All right, we'll give it just a little bit longer. I want to ask Keeper Josh if he has any other Savanna monitor facts that he wants to share with us.
I heard my name, that was it, sorry.
Do you have any facts that you'd like to share about Savanna monitors?
So Savanna
We talked a little
monitors,
bit about their teeth,
okay,
and that they're from Central Africa and they eat other animals.
So they do eat a ton of other animals. They're very opportunistic, so they're not super picky what they eat, but they're also super smart, so they know how to figure out where food is and stuff. One of the things about them is kind of cool. They do what's called feast and famine. So in Africa where they are, the rainy season or like the good, easy to find food season lasts about 8 months out of the year. And then after that, it's super dry and it's really hard to find food. So if you look at Jack's tail, it's a little bit wider. It's kind of like how leopard geckos store store fat in their tail. They do the same thing. Here at the zoo, we make sure that Jack doesn't eat too much food so he doesn't get too chunky. So that's what he's actually supposed to look like. Oh, hello. Kuzco.
Coming out?
Yeah. So Jack is not fully grown yet. Usually about average size for a male Savannah monitor is about 3.5 feet long and about 12 to 15 pounds. He is currently 6 pounds.
So he could
He
probably
still
almost
gets,
double.
yep, he'll still get a lot bigger. We monitor how well he's eating and how active he is.
Monitor.
Yeah, that's actually how they got their name. Did you guys talk about that? So monitors are called monitors because Nile monitors, really big water monitors. Where's Nile? I'm blanking on that.
In Egypt?
Egypt, thank you. People thought that they were actually monitoring the crocodiles, and they were like telling the people that they were there. They are partially watching them, but they're really watching them because they really want to go find their eggs and eat their eggs.
So that's why they're called a monitor.
Yeah,
That's
why
cool.
their whole family is called monitors.
Are the Komodo dragons in the monitor family?
They are the biggest ones of all lizards, and they're in the monitor family.
Yeah, so if Jack's shape looks a little bit familiar to you, it's because they are one of the relatives of the Komodo dragons.
Yep, it would look like him, but it's mostly brown and as long as a car, and can weigh about 100 to 200 pounds, depending on how big they get.
Oh my gosh, those guys are so cool. I love it. All right, my friends, let's see if we have any questions. I don't see any right now. I'll scroll back and see if we missed any. All right, so this was a bit of a shorter cast, and that is totally okay. We're gonna go over in front of Sydney's exhibit just to talk to you guys a little bit more about the opening, and just so you can see Sydney. Hi, Sydney. Hi. So Sydney is very excited to have people nearby. However, just remember, we are opening to the public on May 4th. Sorry, we're opening for members on May 4th in limited capacity. And then as long as nothing changes with governmental regulations, we will be opening on May 11th for the public with a limit of 500 people per day. Again, just to encourage that social distancing and make sure that everyone stays safe, including our staff and you who come to the zoo. So we're very excited that you're coming. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. It's just ZooMontana. You can also check out our website with our learning resources. And then if you want some really awesome free worksheets and at-home education ideas, we also have been posting a lot on Facebook, if you haven't noticed, as well as on other social media platforms, including even on Twitter and Instagram. Now, before we sign off today, we have gotten a treat of being able to watch some snakes eat their rats. Now, we totally understand if that's not your thing, you can log off at any time. Our snakes are fed not live. Our snakes are fed rats and mice that are already dead. So part of that is because, we're gonna head over this way just so we can watch. Part of that is because, we don't want our animals to get hurt because mice and rats have some pretty intense teeth themselves. But also, many of our animals, like we mentioned, were former pets, and so they often don't have a great hunting instinct. So this is Jenkins again, the red-tailed boa, and we're gonna see if she wants to eat her extra large rat right now. We have any questions? Okay. All right. So this is Jenkins, and we're going to see if she's interested in eating her rat. You'll notice that Keeper Josh is using a set of tongs to make sure that his hands stay well out of the way. Snakes do have intense teeth, often kind of like that Gila monster skull we saw earlier. And so we want to make sure that everybody stays safe. Sometimes our snakes are super hungry right to start with. Most of them are not. They're very well fed. And sometimes they just want to hang out and smell the rat. But we'll see if Jenkins, the red-tailed boa, wants to eat her rat today. Ooh, she's looking interested. We'll see if she wants to eat it. You might notice she's doing little flicks of her tongue out. She's scenting that rat and seeing if she's interested in eating right now. Most of the time, snakes are going to be eating their food head first because it's easier, they don't catch on the legs as much. But sometimes our snakes are a little silly and they don't quite eat them head first. We did a video a few weeks ago of Mesa, the gopher snake, eating his mouse, and he definitely ate it rear end first, which means that the legs got stuck on his face. So definitely check out that video on our YouTube as well. Now we'll come back and check in on Jenkins in just a minute to see if she has decided that she's hungry right now. If not, usually we leave the rats out for part of the day to see if the animals are interested in eating them, and if they're not, then we'll take it. We don't want it to go bad or gross inside their exhibit. These snakes, like we said, are very well fed, so that we don't have to worry if they do miss a week of food. We do keep track of whether they eat and how often to make sure that they are healthy. Our animals also get weighed at least once or twice a month to make sure that they are within a healthy range. All right, so I don't think she's super interested, so we're gonna go see if we can check out Leroy eating his rat. So Leroy is right on this lower shelf right here, and he is coiled around a plant, but we'll see if he's interested in eating a rat. He was shedding this last week, so I don't know if he ate last Saturday, so he might be, oh, there he goes. See how fast that was? And now the very slow but really cool process of watching them eat a rat. Now, Brandis has a question. How often do the snakes eat? Super good question. Thank you so much. So most of our snakes eat once a week, or they eat once every other week. So because, like Emily said, they are reptiles, they're cold-blooded, they don't need the energy from their food to heat their blood. Their blood temperature comes from their surroundings, which is why most reptiles require heat lamps and things around their body or near to their body so that they can warm up. So our snakes don't eat very often. In the wild, snakes can go months without eating because that's how often they can find food. Most of the time, I think they probably would eat as often as they can in the wild, just in case they can find food. But here at the zoo, they only eat once a week. I know, it made me jump too. Sometimes he's very fast, so that's pretty awesome. All right. So we are going to keep an eye, well actually we'll probably come back on him because he's just sitting there for a minute. We'll go see if any of the other snakes are eating their food. So we're going to start over at our milk snake exhibit. He's our smallest and youngest snake. He is less than a year old, and he gets fed little bitty baby mice, and he's very shy. So I've actually tried to watch him eat his food, and I only caught him one time. He has a little dish, and he's usually hiding underneath his water dish, and in fact, I don't think we can even see him right now. Last time, I had to camp out here for 10 minutes before he poked his head out, and he ate one little bitty mouse, and then he ran away. So, we may not be able to see him, but let's see. Did you feed Taco already? Oh no, we're going right now. He's at the back of the exhibit. All right, so Taco, our California king snake, the one that was active at the beginning of this live stream, we'll see if he wants to eat his food. So Keeper Josh is making sure he has his attention to see if he wants to eat his mouse. And then he's seeing if he's kind of moving it around and seeing if he's interested. Ooh, I think he might be interested. Can you see okay? I can trade you spots. Pardon the reflection in the glass, my friends. Many of our snakes, like we said, are pretty well fed, so most of the time they're not super interested immediately, although many of them will eat it soon after as well.
They're all camera shy today.
Keeper Josh says everyone's being camera shy today, so we'll come back a little bit later and see if he has eaten anything. While we're waiting for Keeper Josh to head to the next exhibit, you guys can actually see, just like the snakes, Scout the Screech Owl actually does eat mice. He's got a little white mouse on one of his branches. He hasn't eaten it yet. Sometimes he'll eat during the day, and sometimes he'll eat at night. He is mostly nocturnal. He gets a couple of mice every day, as well as mixing in other different kinds of animals. Are you doing Grumpy?
Yeah, he is in mating mode, so he hasn't really cared about food lately.
So if you didn't hear Keeper Josh, some of our snakes are in what's called breeding mode, which means that they focus entirely on scenting for females and not necessarily on eating. So we'll see if Grumpy is interested. You can also see so he is doing something called false striking, which is something that hognose snakes often do. You can also see his head is flattening out, kind of looking like it's a rattlesnake. This is a defense strategy that hognose snakes do. So right now he's more threatening the mouse rather than trying to eat it, but now he's scenting it to see if it's something he wants to eat. Hognose snakes are called that because they have that big turned up scale on the top of their nose, and they use that normally in the wild to dig into the ground. They'll often eat mice, but they are also what's called a toad specialist, so they'll eat a lot of toads in the wild. They'll use that nose to dig up their food. You can see that scale a little bit better now. So again, like I said, not all of our snakes eat every week, and that's okay. We just make sure that they are still healthy and that we do offer them their food a few times on the feeding day to make sure that everyone stays healthy. And right now, I think he's more interested in who's outside the glass than he is in his food.
Good for Harry?
Huh?
You good for Harry?
Hold on to Harry. So Harry the ball python is also an old man. He's about 26 or 27 years old, and he lately has not been super interested in eating, or at least not very quickly. Oh, he's smelling. What do you think, bud? Ooh. He's thinking about it. Ooh, maybe. So snakes, actually, most of them have pretty decent eyesight, but for the most part, out in their natural habitats, they're plants that are, oh, did you guys see that? So cool. So in their natural habitats, most snakes, the plants that they're around them are taller than they are, so good eyesight isn't going to do them much good. However, that tongue is how they find their food. They smell with that tongue, and that is how they usually are finding their food. So as you notice, he twisted around that really quickly. He is a constricting species, and in fact, pretty much all of the snakes we have here are constricting species. They squeeze their food until it's dead, and even though this food is already dead, this is still an instinct that our snakes do to kill their food that's already dead. So it's really cool to watch that happen. All right, we'll see if he moves him now. I'm gonna go see if Leroy has made any progress, and I will let Emily know in just a moment. All right, my friends, so it looks like that is probably all the action we're going to get for the rest of the day. The snakes had a really, some pretty good action actually, but they do take a while to swallow that food. Now, we thank you again for watching our stream today. It was a little bit shorter, but we still had fun. Oh, did anyone want to guess at that new exhibit that we have? We'll give it a couple minutes to see. We'll go walk over and show you what the exhibit looks like. So I mentioned earlier quarantine, and the bottom exhibit is where the quarantine exhibit will be. And quarantine just is making sure that we don't pass any germs along from one animal to another. So that means that the keepers will make sure that they don't take care of the same animal at the same time to make sure that no germs get passed. And then how long is quarantine in general for reptiles, Keeper Josh?
90 days.
90 days. So because their systems work slower than us, and because they are just a different immune system in general, it takes a little bit longer for their quarantine. Most mammals' quarantine is about a month. So it's about 3 times as long for reptiles. So this is where they're going to go. They're going to have lots of places to climb and to hide, as well as some cool plants in there, and a bridge, and lots of heat. So, any guesses about, it is a reptile. All right, so no guesses. Should we announce it, or should we wait, Keeper Josh?
As far as I know, we're going to wait.
All right, so keep in mind and send us what your guesses are later, and then soon you'll get to see for yourself what animal we have. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week.